Statesville is growing fast. What does that mean for your neighborhood? Join us today as we have City Manager Ron Smith here to talk about annexations and rezoning and how that shapes the city's future.
Welcome to Front and Center, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on government operations, offering you an exclusive glimpse into the inner workings of the city of Statesville.
Welcome back to Front and Center. I'm here again with my fabulous co-host, Nikayla Griffin.
Hello.
And today we have back in the hot seat again, City Manager Ron Smith. We're probably going to ask you about Target, but okay, whatever. Yes. Go ahead and put that out there. I'm just kidding.
The same thing I just told you last time.
I know. So we're here to talk today about annexation and rezoning, how it shapes our city, and it is a big topic right now for the city. So that's why we wanted to get you back on here, give you a chance to put out some information, because if people are like me, I don't understand a lot of these things. I mean, before I worked for the city, I didn't understand what annexation and rezoning meant. I didn't know what you could and couldn't do. So let's just jump right on in and tell us about rezoning and how it's shaping Statesville, what it means.
Well, we're going to talk about annexation and rezonings, and they're kind of part and parcel when it comes to the city. And so rezoning is basically when you want to you want to upsize or upfit, land and make it, change what is allowed on a piece of property. So what we're seeing a lot of right now is residential zones, like with a lower density, meaning less homes per acre, either in the county or in the city, and they're being zoned to a more intensive zoning district, meaning that you can have more houses on that property. So that's been what has, kind of been, taking up all the oxygen in the room with the council. And what it means is basically utilities are either in the area, utilities being water, sewer, or one of the two, sewer generally. And they're in the area, and a developer wants to capitalize on that, get more density, because you can't do that with septic systems. And so that's density is it.
Sewer's the hot commodity there.
It absolutely
is. And it's because of the Iredell County's restrictions on it.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense now.
You can't really build a house on anything less than half an acre if you have a septic system and a well, because you have to have spacing and all of that. So the rezonings we're seeing is, basically developers going for a higher zoning district and more density. And, from a city perspective, how's that impact us? Well, more density means more customers, more residents, more service, needs, everything. So, but at the end of the day, I look at it as a good thing, because, I think we're going to get into some other questions, about what's so good about it. A growing city is a healthy city. If you're stagnant, and especially in a time of high inflation like we're in now, if you're stagnant and not growing and costs are going up, who is taking on all those costs?
Right.
The existing residents. So it means that that's going to go up. And if you're able to spread the wealth, so to speak, then that's a good thing. But that's really what's happening. That's what, in the next few months, we got a lot of them coming up, many of which are controversial, and I get it. But, it's a balancing act.
Okay.
Awesome. So when we're talking about rezoning, we're really talking about how, the city is being managed and how it's growing and it's evolving. I'm sorry. Can you share an example of a recent rezoning project or decision that we have made that significantly impacts the community?
Well, I would say that any of the rezonings on the outskirts of Statesville proper. There were a couple on the east side, the Warrenwood subdivision, the River Hills Road, or River Hills subdivision. Those were pretty big, about 500 or so houses, and that's a significant impact on the neighborhood, because that's a kind of a quasi farming community.
Right.
Been there forever. Got a lot of long-standing landowners. But it gets down to, somebody cannot either afford or can't maintain or has no family that's going to be able to handle a large tract of land in the future. So they're looking to, capitalize on that, and it's their property.
Absolutely.
So, but it's not without its consequences, because what we hear a lot is that I moved to this area to get away from the city, or I don't want to be in the city. And now the city's coming to me.
Right.
And that's not untrue, because we do end up annexing those areas. So, yeah, those have been pretty impactful, but you could probably take that argument or that discussion and put it in 10 different places around Statesville right now, and that's the case.
Right, exactly.
One other, on the flip side, for years and years, people looked at I-40, I-77, the crossroads, and said, well, why didn't some of these bigger tracks, particularly at Crawford Road, why have they never developed?
Right.
Well, they are now, so there's been a rezoning out there. I think that's been 2.5, 3 years ago. It's been a little while. But the first industrial building has been built out there. And we were always told, number one, it should develop, but number two, the access is not that great.
Right.
And it's not. But in this economy, the developers have figured it out. And, I like to think that the market is going to sort itself out.
Right.
And that's what's happened. I guess it was just our time for that to happen.
And they are working on another development. I think we call it Peppercorn, because they closed a road. They closed Crawford Road this past weekend to cut a line across the road. So, I mean, they are actively working out there. I mean, it's everywhere, it feels like. So, yeah.
I want to say there's 4 million square feet of industrial of some sort that's planned out there.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, so rezoning seems to be a balancing act between development and maintaining the character of existing neighborhoods. How do the community members, what say do they have in this? What does the city do to let them help in these decisions?
Well, we have public hearings. So the public hearing is kind of the end of the process. That's the time in which, if your neighbor is rezoning property, you have every right to come in and give your opinion to the city council on, yes, I want to see this, no, I don't, or I'm okay with it, but I'd like to see these things added. So that's that's the end of it. However, with our planning department, there are up to 3 times that you can comment and that you can provide those comments. The first one is if it's a conditional zoning, which most of ours are, and that means that it's you can put conditions and you can put a site plan associated with it. So there's some negotiation that can take place.
Right.
So if you have that, then there's a mandatory community meeting. So Nikayla can come in and meet with the developer in a very informal setting and say, okay, I like what you've done here or what you're proposing, but this is going to be a problem. Can you change this? And some of the developers that I've been experiencing, they're making those changes.
I've seen that as well. Yes,
and
I've noticed that.
So if you do it on the front end of it, then it goes through the process and it's much less controversial.
Right.
If you're not, as a developer, if you're not willing to take the community's input, if it's reasonable input, it's not always reasonable.
Right.
Then I think those have been successful. So then the second part of that is your next step is going to the planning board.
Right.
Planning board has an open meeting. They call it a courtesy hearing, and you can talk there. Right. And then you go to the council, and there's 2 readings at council. The first one is where that public hearing is held. So there's opportunity to provide input, and you can call council members. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
One particular development has a Facebook site or a Facebook page.
They do.
That is putting out a lot of information, and I guess they're communicating amongst themselves.
Okay.
And council can actually go to the planning board if they wanted to hear the meeting. We don't really see that much, but they also get the minutes and they hear what the people have said, and they get the vote that the planning board had. Yes. I mean, that's just what their advice to council. It's just they don't have to go by what planning board says, but so I mean, they get to hear the concerns. I mean, everything is in their packet. I mean, so they hear ahead of time and they know kind of going in what's going to be said. And I mean, they have the opportunity to kind of get out there and see it. I mean,
Yeah, and I honestly think we provide more information than the council can actually, than anybody really can absorb.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is a lot. And,
yes.
you know, and it's getting to the point where we're having to schedule, we've never had to do this before, but we're having to schedule bigger rezoning. So there's a statutory process. So you just kind of go through with on a timeline, but now you don't want two or more, you know, controversial or big rezonings on one city council meeting, because good policy does not happen when when you have, you know, one, you know, full house, make a decision, then the next group comes in and you have another full house. I mean, it tires everybody out.
Right.
It's not good decision making. And so we're trying to space those
That's a great
out.
idea.
Give everybody a fair shake, from the public to the council
Right.
to the developer.
I mean, if you sit there and listen to 50 people get up with negative comments, it's hard not to have negative thoughts in your mind when you go to the next case, even though whatever you've decided.
Right.
I mean, it's hard to turn that off and go to the next.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have a big one like that. That's a great idea. Good to hear that you guys are doing that.
Well, and it's not something new, you know, I mean, it's new for us, but other places do it. But we've just finally gotten to the point where we have to.
Right.
That could be a good thing, though.
Yeah, yeah.
It's good for us, too.
yeah.
Whew, those benches out there get tough on you, I'm telling you, in that council chambers.
Yeah.
Whew,
It's a little
sitting there a little while.
The sun starts to shine in.
Yeah.
But so now we're going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to talk about another important topic, which is annexation. For those who may not know what that is, could you please explain to them what it is and how a property owner would want to pursue annexation?
So generally speaking, annexation nowadays only happens if you need something. So let's say again, Nikayla wants to develop property and she needs city sewer. Then we have a requirement that if you use our utilities, you have to request annexation.
Okay.
So otherwise, you have to pay 2.5 times the rate on water or sewer, which
So
is pretty expensive.
Yeah, you're either paying to be annexed in to pay taxes, or you're paying 2.5 times the rate of the.
Yes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what that means is when you do get annexed, you pay the city tax on top of the county tax. So you're paying basically double what you were paying, but you get everything else in return: fire coverage, police.
Do you get sanitation?
Sanitation, you know, all of the core services that we provide are baked into that, you know, that tax rate. And but that's what it means, is you're annexed in, but it's only upon request. So with these new developments, if the city annexes, I'll say Warren Woods again, for instance. So you annex the one development that asked to come into the city limits, that's all we can do.
Okay.
So until your neighbor, Nikayla, April, you get yours annexed in, the only way we can get April is if she asks. And then we have to provide those services to her when she comes in. So we can't go out and annex your property and then grab April's.
Okay, so you're saying you cannot forcibly come out and make me come into the city. I have to ask the city to come into the city. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. That's good to know, because we get a lot of questions about that.
Oh, yeah,
People think that it still happens.
Yeah, definitely. And that's, I guess that was abolished about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer.
Maybe, yeah.
I actually used to work for a company, and one of the jobs that I did was forcible annexation.
Wow.
And it was no fun, because nobody wants to be, you know, pulled in against their will, so to speak. And I remember one time I thought I was going to get thrown out of the second floor window of the Asheville Civic Conference Center, because I was in there with a group of people telling them, well, here's why we're going to do this.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Police.
Yeah.
And fire.
Yeah. So that went away. You know, it was a tool for cities at the time, and you know, it had its purpose, and I think it was healthy for some. But we can't do it anymore. I mean, the bottom line is statutes changed, and that's not what we can do.
Okay. That's good to know. So we know that we can't forcibly put them out.
Correct.
And so that's good to know. I wanted to say it again just for the people in the back.
That's right.
We cannot come get you.
Right.
We
So
definitely cannot come get you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So has Statesville recently annexed any new areas that you can tell us about?
Yeah. If I would have been a little more prepared, I would have tried. I was going to try and total up the acreage, but we have annexed thousands of acres in the last few years because of all the development.
Right.
And so anytime that developer comes in and says, well, we're going to do this, and we're going through the rezoning, we follow that with an annexation. Okay. So, we have annexed quite a bit. Okay. And, it's been good for the city. It will be better because of the tax base, but then it'll be better once the properties develop, because that, again, it goes back to being, financially healthy.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. What are some of the challenges that come with the annexation for both the city and the prospective residents of the annexed areas? I I know obviously we have infrastructure. That would be a possible challenge, but what are you seeing here?
Well, it's really that, we have, there's a balance there. We can't go too far because we don't want to extend the need for services beyond our ability to provide them. Okay. And so we try to do an analysis, and we've been working on this for years, and I think we've finally gotten it refined to where I feel more comfortable with it, and to understand, well, what does it mean for individual developments? What does that mean as far as the impact on our services? And some are easy to deal with. Some are the model that we have is kind of an incremental cost model where, again, the Warren Woods example, how many new toters are going to be out there, for sanitation? Yeah. So then what kind of route does that mean? And so how many people do we have to add? And do we have to add a truck? And how does that factor into the revenue stream? And then likewise with police, how many additional patrol officers are we going to need for this? So we build that in. The challenge has really proven to be fire, because fire is a totally different animal, because you have anchors, you have stations that have to, to meet ISO response ratings. You have to have them in certain places. And as we, what I thought 5 years ago was all the development was going to start in the south and come up north. That's not the way it's happened. It's kind of been this shotgun effect. It's just everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is on the fire side. And the chief and I have you hear them on the fire side. We have conversations and we analyze, what we need and where we need it all the time.
Yes.
And we have to work with the county because we have automatic aid agreements with the county. So, that's the challenge.
Absolutely.
Everything else seems to fall into place, but that's the challenge. Fire has been it.
Okay. Understand that. So just looking ahead just a little bit, I know we talked about some of the, it's a lot of annexations going on, but what are some of the future ones that are happening, and how can it affect the residents in the city? What should they be aware of too?
Well, they're going to keep coming.
Yeah.
There's the number I've heard is that there's a deficit of about 4 million homes I think it's in the southeast.
Wow.
That's, whomever measures that has said we need 4 million houses. So, if the demand on Statesville is any indication, I believe that. So my guess is we're going to continue to see these properties turn over, and as more people get out of farming, or in development encroaches on farmland, and they just decide, well, I'm going to capitalize on that. We're going to see a lot more of these happen. The council has, I won't say struggled, but the council talks about this a lot. You know, when do we say when?
Right.
How far do we want to
Right.
go? How dense is too dense? And, you know, so that's going to be an evolving conversation. And, you know, I don't think that they're, you know, rubber stamping everything that
Right.
comes in by any means. They take them very seriously.
Exactly,
And, you know, we have, in the next few months, we've got about 2,500 lots that are going to be up for
Holy cow.
debate. Yeah.
That's
why we
that's a
separated them.
100 times how many people per house? How many would that take to get a target?
We're about to get
I'm over here trying to get this.
Well, let's talk
I'm doing the
about
math in my head and on my fingers.
but let's talk about that. So for years, I guess I've been around here for 25 years in Iredell County, either Mooresville or here, and all I've ever heard is Statesville's not growing. Statesville's not growing. Statesville's this. Statesville's that.
You can't say that now.
No.
Lord.
And now what we're hearing is you got too much residential. But the fact of the matter is you have to have the rooftops.
Yeah.
You have to have people spending money
Right.
for retailers and
wanna
restaurants to come here. And you can't just make that happen.
Absolutely.
And so it's you know, it's what do you want? And if you want a Target, or if you want, you know, more grocery stores or whatever, you name it.
Not a Dollar General.
No. But if you want those,
Right.
if you want those things, you need to have the population to
Right.
support it. And if you look at what happened in Mooresville, because I lived through this, I lived in Mooresville at the time. As it started to grow, we used to go to Huntersville or Cornelius or
Right.
Charlotte.
Yep.
And so, but then what you saw was you saw the houses coming. You didn't see the commercial come right out of the
Right.
chute. You saw the houses come, and then eventually everything was followed by more, you know, restaurants, more retail, more grocers,
Yes.
and things like that. So, you know, if that's what folks want, there has to be, you know, a population base to support it. I mean, it's economics.
We'll have our target.
All right, so with all the growth and change, we talked about infrastructure, but how is the city keeping up with the infrastructure and the need for services and the big topic, schools? I know that's not a city topic, but it has to be looked at with this. So,
Well, again, you know, going back to what I was saying earlier, we're trying to be very purposeful in identifying the needs, and we're explaining those needs to the council. Again, the incremental needs are going to grow. It's almost like growing with the developments, you know, and I think we can handle those. The big capital spends, we just need, that's fire primarily, and then rolling stock, you know, such as sanitation vehicles,
Right.
Police cruisers, things like that, the things that cost a lot more money. We just need to make sure that we know it's coming. You know, don't, you know, in 2 years, if I go to the city council and say, you know what, y'all, you've been approving all these developments. Now you need to give me an extra $2 million for these things. That's not good from my perspective, because I'm not preparing them for
You're
those
fired.
decisions. Could be.
honestly, I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
So that's part of it. From an infrastructure, from the water sewer side, we also have to be very purposeful there, because you only have so much sewer capacity to go around. We have a lot of capacity in Third Creek. We have less capacity in Fourth Creek. We have two plants. And we looked at Third Creek as almost thinking of it as an unlimited capacity to serve, because it's very low in comparison to what it could serve. But with all the development, we did not expect this 3 years ago. And so it's changing it's kind of a paradigm shift, and it's making me feel very protective, and some on council very protective of the capacity we have.
Right.
So we keep up with that. You know, we know percentage-wise where we are and what each development should, you know, take of that capacity. So that's the big one, because everything in water, everything in sewer, and everything in electric costs a lot of money.
yes.
So, so we have to be very purposeful in getting in front of it.
Well, with the sewer, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but are there plans to upsize those two facilities? I mean, I'm just curious.
Not yet,
5,
but
10,
we're
20
already,
years? I mean, you're looking and,
we'll have to.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that it'll have to. You have thresholds. You have to hit an 80% threshold of your capacity before the state says you have to start planning for an expansion.
Okay, that makes sense then.
We're a long way off on Third Creek, but on Fourth Creek, we're not. We're already having discussions about, okay, we're not mandated to start planning, but let's start on our own.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't blame you guys.
And from a financial standpoint, when you're talking about a plant expansion, you're talking
Wow.
probably over 50 million.
That is
so
crazy.
and the way that is paid for is by user fees. So if you're buying water and sewer capacity from the city, that's how we pay for those things. That's why we've had to go up on rates. This year was 3%. I see that continuing because we have to be able to pay for the future, and that's the only way to do it.
But on the same note, we're really good about getting grants when we can because we have the huge water line project about to start.
Yes.
Is it Water Street? What street is it over? I can't think of the name of the street.
I don't remember where it's starting, but it's going to basically be through all through the city.
Yes, and that was grant funding, wasn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of it.
Well, that was we got an allocation from the state on that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was that $20 million.
Right,
If
$20
it's the one
million.
you're talking about, that
Yes.
was the $20 million project.
It's good.
Started several years ago, but it's so massive that it's taken.
That is a lot of
2
planning.
years
Right.
to get it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So as we wrap up, I really appreciate, I know April does too, so I'm going to say we appreciate all the hard work that you do, the city council, the planning department. However, you guys do such a great job because we know that it's a big job, so we appreciate it. But is there a message that you would like to tell the citizens about the annexation, rezoning, and the future growth of Statesville?
Future growth.
Just give them a speech.
Well, I kind of said part of it earlier
Mm-hmm.
about, if you want a better, higher quality of life,
Mm-hmm.
more places to shop, more parks, more places to eat, and all of those things, the tax base and the population needs to expand because we have to be able to fund those improvements. That does not come without inconvenience. That does not come without a cost. I live in a neighborhood that is across the street from a 200-acre farm, and I keep wondering, well, when's that?
Right.
When are they going to sell that and develop it? And they will. I mean, there's no doubt. And so I'll be living through the same concerns that others are. But if you look at the big picture, and that's easy for me to say, but if you look at the big picture, what's best for the city?
Right.
And I think that, do we want to be our neighbors to the south? I don't think so. But we want to make sure we're growing at a reasonable rate. And some might say we're not doing that reasonably right now, but grow at a reasonable pace and make sure we're keeping up with the costs as we go along. And then everything else, I hope, will fall into place. And I'll plug our strategic plan, the front and center strategic plan. It talks about all these things, about managing the resources, about connecting our communities, providing housing choices for the whole demographic, not just one. And really, making sure that our quality of life is such that we attract people to Statesville and that they're not going to Hickory or Mooresville or Winston or whatever, because we've got a long way to go, but I think we have an unlimited, we have a high ceiling and we can get there and be a great, much better place than we are now. I'll put it that way.
Well, you've done a great job. We've done a great job.
Thank
as a
you.
city. Everybody.
And it's a collective effort, and we
absolutely.
definitely stand on the shoulders of the people that have, made decisions before us.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, we know you're a busy man. We thank you again for coming out, taking time out of your schedule. I've seen your calendar. It's Emily, thank you. Just teasing. Ron's a busy man.
That's
and
not what
again,
I tell her.
Again, we're so grateful these are questions that people do not understand. You've given good answers and good explanations, and we do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And if anyone,
thank you guys for asking.
if anyone has questions for Ron, send those to info@statesvillenc.net. We'll get those over to him, and he will personally reply. I'm just kidding. You'll get your answers. And be sure to subscribe to our channel on YouTube or wherever you're watching from, and make sure you're keeping up with what's going on in the city. Thanks.
Tune in to the next episode as we share our dedication to transparency, public service, and governance, shining a spotlight on our commitment to keeping you well informed about all things City of Statesville.